Welcome to the day after Saturday. I'm your host, Jackson Juzang, and today we're with one of the most accredited, respected, and skilled basketball trainers in the world. NBA recent champ, Jayson Tatum. NBA MVP, Joel Embiid. NBA All-Stars, Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Maxey. Bradley Beal. Tyler Herro. These are some of his clients. He's a newfound author of the book Stop Bullshitting Yourself, a USA Today bestseller. This man needs no introduction to whomever roams the basketball world, Mr. Drew Hanlen. Thank you so much for joining the show, man.
Appreciate you. After giving me that, to give me all those accolades, I really got to live up to it for you for this next hour. You know what I mean?
Nah, man. Hey, your work speaks for itself, so that's no issue there, man. All right, man. Well, again, first thing I want to do is congratulate you, man. I know we had a little discussion about this last time, but, being an author is something that's incredibly challenging for anybody who decides to start writing. It's a very lengthy process, and, I wanted to get your thoughts on what motivated you broadly to write Stop Bullshitting Yourself.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, when I first started my training career, it was all about basketball. It was me doing skills and drills and me trying to teach, techniques and little details that would help them on the court. And I quickly realized throughout my career that I was going to be just as much of a mental coach and a therapist and a best friend and a motivator and all of those things for my clients. And, there's constant sharing of information. And what I mean by that is one of my clients goes through a stress or a struggle, and we try things out until we find a solution for that problem. And then another client is going through that exact same thing. And I'm like, well, this worked for so-and-so. And I'm constantly just learning from, these guys, and I'm trying new things and finding what doesn't work and what does work and trying to improve those techniques. And, the last couple years, I've really felt like everything is streamlined. I have a very, kind of rigorous process to narrow down the focus of what my clients work on. And then, I build out these strategic blueprints that are as detailed as anything and help them get results. And so I've always used this, blueprint, this outline, this system to help them on the court. But what I quickly realized was, I helped my dad lose 90 pounds in a calendar year using the exact same system. I was like, hey, what's the one thing you want to do? You want to lose weight to become healthier? Okay, let's break it down. Let's build out a blueprint, and then let's actually follow through with action. And once I saw my dad lose that much weight, I had so many people being like, what did you do? And he's like, well, Drew just acted like I was one of his clients. And so sure enough, I was like, you know what? I've got this goal, this system, these strategies that work for not just basketball players, but to improve your business, to improve your health, to improve your relationships, to improve, your parenting, to improve, anything that you want to do in life. And so I finally sat down, I started writing, 100,000 words turned into 130,000 words, which turned to 150,000 words. And then I had to really think, like, when I'm reading books, and I'm a big reader now, I'm like, what's the thing that turns me off? And it's when I go long chapters and I don't feel like I'm getting from those chapters. I feel like this, the author is just kind of throwing in a bunch of words so that we, read this long book and it feels like they're accomplished because they wrote this 500, 700 page book. And I was like,
Right.
I want to boil everything down into what is the takeaway? What is the story or the lesson? How do I get them to get that power punch? And then how do I move on so that I keep the reader's attention and ultimately give them a system so that they have the solutions for their problems? And so, that process of 150,000 to 120,000, I went the opposite way, boiled it down to like 40,000 words and got it to a place where I'm really proud of the finished product that, so many people are loving and enjoying, even non-readers, which has been the best part about it.
Well, I'm definitely going to ask you about that editorial process, especially because this is your first time writing a book. But first, I'd like to ask you, what's one core concept you think that, like you said, all types of people can take away from your book, without taking out any of the fat and just focusing on one important idea?
To be honest with you, I think it's the process of choosing what to work on, what to do. I think that the first thing that everyone should do is they should get out a piece of paper, get out their computer, and write or type everything that they want to improve in their life. What are all the changes that would make their life better? We all know exactly what would make our life better. We know that eating healthier or working out more will improve our health and improve our fitness. We know that picking up side jobs or being a little more efficient or picking up a different job, that will make us more money. Improving our spending habits and not wasting as much money on dumb stuff, that'll also improve our financial situation. We know that being more present when we're with our kids and being more present when we're with our spouse, we know that doing little things that actually matter and those things will improve our relationship with our kids or our loved ones. So we all know what to do, we just don't do it. So the first thing is write down everything that you would love to improve and then rank those things. That's where it really gets tricky. And there's a story in the book, about me actually not prioritizing what I thought mattered most in my life. Everyone would be like, what matters most in your life? And me, like everyone else, I was like, my family. And I really do think that my family is the number one thing that truly brings me happiness and the number one thing that fuels me and drives me and that I live for. But here I was, my grandma gets diagnosed with cancer. She goes into the hospital and I'm with her for day 1 and day 2. Day 3, when she's literally on her deathbed, I'm like, Grandma, I love you so much. I've got to go do these pre-draft workouts. I'll be back in a couple days after this weekend. You're going to make it out of this. I leave. The next conversation I had with my grandma was on FaceTime, and it was the last conversation I ever had with her. And I was like, how dumb am I? I went up to go work out some players where that one weekend was not going to change their career. And then I come back and, my grandma's already passed away. So I miss out on that last, couple moments with somebody that I really, truly loved. And I was like, man, even me, somebody that preaches all these great things, was bullshitting myself. I was not doing the things I know I needed to do, which was be there for my family at that given moment. And so I would say the second thing is prioritizing that list so that you actually understand what matters most. And then the third thing is the one that people hate. And I go, circle number 1, that's your top priority, and cross off everything else. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, all those things are important. I said, I know, but you identified that one thing at the top of the list was the most important thing. So until that thing is checked off, until you actually do that thing, have a problem solving solution for that thing, you're not going to do anything else. Too many people try to do everything instead of master something. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing. And then the second thing is to they pair together. That's the blueprint builder, kind of the starting process. After you get that and you identify that one thing, what you have to do is you have to connect with something deep inside you that's actually going to drive action. I think one of the things that people mess up all the time is they have this gray area and they allow that gray area to remain in their life. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is 10 pounds overweight. 10 pounds overweight, when you look in the mirror, you're like, ugh, I wish I was 10 pounds less. When you try on stuff, it still fits, but you're like, it's a little bit snug, it's a little bit tight. When you're 10 pounds overweight, you're not really worried about your health, your long-term health, because you're like, it's only 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So you just let that 10 pounds linger. Now, if you're really fat and you're having health problems and your clothes don't fit, then you hit rock bottom and it actually wakes you up and it drives action. The problem is most people have that 10-pound gap. And it's not just weight. It's in everything. It's a basketball player that's good enough to be all conference, that's good enough to get college looks, but it's not good enough to get the college scholarships, and they end up just being good. It's the relationships where you have a 9 to 5, you come home and you sit down for dinner and you're still focused on your work, and then you have dinner, and then next thing you know, you're putting your kids to bed and you don't have a real relationship with your kids. You're just their dad or their mom. And you're like, but I'm present. I'm supporting them. I'm doing all the things that mom and dad need to do, but there could be a lot better relationship if you were all in. And so that little gray area is what you got to remove. And so that second part, after you identify the one thing you need to work on, you have to understand why. Like, why does that mean so much to you? What does your life look like if you don't change? What does your life look like if you do change? And then compare those two. And when you realize that there's such a better life out there if you actually go all in, that's what actually drives results. And then the third step of this whole process is once you get that motivation and once you identify that one thing, then you have to map out a blueprint that actually allows you to break that big audacious goal or those big changes you want to make into small segments that you'll actually follow through with so that you can actually get the results that you want.
Wow, man, I don't even know if I need to read the book anymore. I feel like you just laid the entire thing out for me. But, man, what a beautiful and personal anecdote that you gave about your grandmother and talking about your dad as well. I think that stuff is beautiful. My mom just lost 50 pounds in the last year as well, so I find that very relatable. And helping her through that process was a very emotional but, motivational experience for me. So kudos to you, man.
Well, I
Well,
appreciate that. And good
yeah,
stuff for your mom, man. 50 pounds, that's no joke. You know what I mean?
yeah, I
That takes
know, man. Yeah,
commitment and sacrifice. So that's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, again, you being a new author, what's one aspect of the either the publishing, writing, or editing process that you feel like you could have went back and done something better, and maybe something you may know for next time because you may write another book. Who knows?
Yeah, I would say the one thing that was hard for me is I was just jumbling down everything, every good story, every good, teaching point, every good anecdote. And then I had to work myself backwards. And then I had to basically say, okay, I have all these great stories. I have all these great concepts. I do have this good system, but how does it work together? And so I went from having all this information and then trying to figure out how to puzzle it together. Now, the next book that I'm writing and I'm working on, I've been researching, but really I have the topic and then I'm working outward and I'm really building it out. And it's a fun process, but I think that's a good learning lesson for me was start with the blueprint. It's no different than the book. Like start with the blueprint, start with the goal in mind. What do you want the reader to learn and take away? Then go out and build from there. So I think I worked backways forward, which is fine. Reverse
Yeah.
engineering something is totally fine. But I think the opposite way moving forward also works as well. And sometimes it's a little bit easier to have one key message because my book, I mean, it's called Stop Bullshitting Yourself. And so when people say like, what's your book about? I'm like, what do you think it's about? You know what I mean? It's
Stop
like,
bullshitting
you got to
yourself, man.
stop bullshitting yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to stop doing the things that you know that you're doing that are causing you stress and struggles and things that you don't want in your life. And so with that goal in mind, I think the writing process was good to me, and the fact that I made it really work and I boiled it down to a system that while you're reading the book, it actually has prompts that people are filling in. So by the end of the book, not only it's like, oh, that was a good book, it's like, no, you actually have the blueprint, you actually have the system. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I took most pride in during the process was originally I didn't have that in the book. And then at the end, I was like, wait a second, I'm doing a disservice just to tell people how to do it because a lot of times information doesn't change people. It's the action with the information that actually changes people. And so I was like, I don't want to just inspire people. I don't want to just motivate people. I want to basically get people to actually take action because that's the whole goal of the book is for them to stop bullshitting themselves. And so I think that's what I really learned in the writing process is make it all about the reader. Start with the goal in mind and then work your way forward or backwards so that you get the end result that really is a process of improvement so that people reading constantly are connecting with the stories, connecting with the strategies, and then ultimately implementing the system that you're outlining.
Yeah, that interactive aspect of the book is certainly a game changer. Like you said, I think a lot of people have problems motivating themselves to do something, and if they have a direct line to do that, that's incredible. Well, again, I think just learning all these core concepts about you, I think the best thing we have to do now is kind of go back to the beginning, and I'm curious, what got you into being a trainer in general with your upbringing in St. Louis?
I was a good basketball player. I was, player of the year in Missouri. I won a state championship. I was, but I was known for my hard work. I was a 5'11" average athlete guy that, worked my way into Division I scholarships, worked my way into being, all conference, first team all conference in college. So I was one of those guys that everyone was like, he's a good player, but he's a great worker. And so what happened was when I was in high school, I had everything that you would want as a high school athlete, all the like local fame and all the local success and all the, the clout. But I had a car that was literally my dad paid $300 and a box of steak for the car. It had 200,000 miles, huge dent in the side. It would not start if it rained, if it snowed, if it was cold outside. I had to jump start it. And I was embarrassed. So I was like, I got to find a job. And so I found out that referees made $18 an hour. I was like $18 an hour as a high school kid. That was like, man, I'm going to
Yeah,
be rich, right?
big money.
And so I go and I called up, left a message, didn't get a, response. I emailed, don't get a response. I'm like, why is this guy not calling me back? So I finally go up to the facility and they're like, oh, he's not in right now. Matt Broback, he's a good friend of mine now. And I said, well, where's his office at? They're like, downstairs. I didn't know business etiquette. I knock on the door. He doesn't answer. I open up the door. It was unlocked. I walk in his office, take out one of his sticky notes and write, I know you got my message. Just call me. Stick it right on his desk. He calls me back and is like, why do you want to referee so bad? I was like, $18 an hour. He's like, well, do you have ref credentials? I was like, no. Have you done ref training? No, but I promise you I can do a better job than all the refs that blow all the calls during my games. He's like, I understand that you think you can do a better job, but you have to have some certifications and qualifications. And he's like, you want $18 an hour, right? I was like, yes. He's like, okay, well then why don't you coach my son's team? Because they all love watching you play. I was like, all right. I retired from refereeing before I ever refed, and now I'm a coach. I'm like, $18 an hour was what I was after. And when I started coaching these kids, all I wanted to do was train them. I was like, man, I want to just get them better for the long run. And so as they started slowly improving, then other people around the area started wanting to train. So I put together these academies. I had 96 kids in these academies. They were paying me monthly, and we, had all these kids training. And then one of the local players was Bradley Beal. And Brad started working out with me. That's the part of the story people don't realize. It wasn't me training Brad. It was Brad was working out with me. Remember, at that time, I'm player of the year in Missouri. Brad is just a freshman averaging 8 points a game. I'm way better than Brad at that point in our lives, And his parents came up to me and were like, we need Brad to work with you. We want him to get a basketball college scholarship. And so I said, okay. So then that sophomore year, his second game of his sophomore year, he scored, I think, 51 or 52 points. After averaging 8 points a game as a freshman, everyone's like, timeout. What did you do this summer? And he's like, I trained with Drew. And truth was, he grew a couple inches. He had lift weights with his brother. His mom and dad had built a great foundation of teaching him how to shoot and teaching him how to play from early age. But I was that accelerator that got him to where he needed to be. And that changed my career. Because then I started training, all the top local Midwestern players and then top college players. And then I was going to all these Nike Elite Skills Academies and training all those players. And then David Lee was my first NBA player, who also was from St. Louis. And then I got Jayson Tatum when he was, a freshman in high school as well. And then it just started rolling, because in my industry, it's all word of mouth. If you help guys get results, then other people want results. And so, but that's how it all started. It started as me wanting to be a referee, then me getting changed over to a coach, me not wanting to do X's and O's and really wanting to teach them how to play. And then through that process, I started working with all these kids around St. Louis. And one of them happened to be Brad Beal, who ended up, making a huge jump in his game. And that took my career to a completely different level.
Man, that string of events, man, I don't know if you're a man of faith, but that is truly something that I would attribute to faith any day of the week. And just, again, you sending a Post-it note to somebody to then eventually, word to mouth, you're now working with Tatum, and you starting with Beal, I think is an incredible story. So how old were you when you started working with Tatum?
So I started working with Brad when I was 17. Brad was 13. Jayson is 27 now. He just had his 27th birthday.
27, yeah.
We've been working together for 14 years. So I was 21.
Okay.
I was 21. I was still in college. And I remember when we first started working together, because his first workout, I killed him. I said no to him. His mom had called me, left a message. I said no. And she was like, I'll take out a loan. I don't care what I have to pay. I'm serious. I want the best for my kid. And really what she wanted him to follow the exact blueprint Brad Beal did. Brad went to Chaminade. Jayson went to Chaminade. Brad played for the St. Louis Eagles. Jayson played for the St. Louis Eagles. Brad trained with me. She was like, he's going to train with you. And so I said no. They called Brad. Brad is a good friend of theirs. Brad actually, and they have a weird connection because Jason's mom played volleyball for Brad Beal's mom in high school. And so she reached out to Brad. Brad called me and said, hey, this is like a little brother to me. I needed a favor. And sure enough, the rest is history. We've been working together ever since.
That's incredible, dude. Well, is there one thing that you feel like you've learned from, it could be any of these big time players that you've been working with through the years, and this could be a recent realization, or it could be, when you first started, but was there an aspect of, an experience with a player that you feel like changed your, philosophy and concepts around training in any way?
I'll tell you what, David Lee, my first NBA client, this is a pretty cool story. So, because people always ask, right now, I'm known as the biggest asshole in the industry in a loving way. They're like, Drew just says whatever's on his mind. He is tough love. It's one of those things, my slogan is hate me now, thank me later. I don't kiss ass. I don't I give out compliments very easy. I'm always there's always another level. I'm always pushing these guys. It'll be something where I remember Joel dropped 59 points on the Utah Jazz and came out early, could have had, a big monster game and stuff like that. 59 is still a monster game. Don't get me wrong. And I remember after the game, first thing I said was, couldn't even get 60. And he's like, bro, like, can you ever just say like, good job? You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I am. And, but David Lee, first workout, he pulls up. I'll never forget because we're in the Midwest in St. Louis. I'm in this gym that like I grew up in, St. Louis, Shrewsbury, Shrewsbury City Center, and no air condition. But he pulls up in his Ferrari, and he's like 5 minutes late. And I remember I'm like so geeked up that whole night. I drove from Nashville to St. Louis, and then I got there at midnight, and I studied film for 7 hours. I didn't sleep. And then I got to the gym an hour early to make sure I could mop the floor. So the floor was good. I was like, NBA player, I can't have him like getting hurt or slipping on the floor. And he showed up late, and I was like, hey, like I have a rule. Like if we're late, we got to get on the line and run. He's like, buddy, NBA players show up whenever they want. Like, no, like I'm not running. Like, let's just get to work. And I was like, we're running. Like, this is what I do. Like, you know what I mean? And so we jogged. He made me run with him, and we like jogged. He didn't run. But then there was a moment where halfway through the workout, he was doing this new move and he was struggling with it. He goes, move on, bro. I don't need this shit. And I was like, I rattled off his stats. I was like, you're 33% over your left shoulder. You're 19% over your right shoulder. You need a hook. If you don't have a hook, and I like went off on him. And I said, just listen to me. If you do this on your footwork, it'll open up your hip, which will give you more space and separation where it'll allow you to shoot easier. And then he did it, and he made like 6 or 8 in a row. I remember I was like, it was like the perfect storm. Afterwards, he told me this, and I didn't know this. He said, Drew, the fact that you made me run, you held me accountable, that was different than anybody else that I've ever worked with. The second thing is the fact that you knew all my analytics and then you held me accountable and forced me to do what I needed to do instead of allowing me to do what I wanted to do. He goes, just so you know, I was only planning on working with you today. I only worked with you because our AAU coach, we shared an AAU coach, he told me, give Drew a chance. You're going to love him. And I was like, I'm not working with a college kid. I was in college and he was in the NBA. He said, I'm not working with a college mid-major basketball player. What are you doing? I'm not listening to that guy. He's like, but the fact that you held me accountable and you taught me stuff that, I didn't really think I needed. He's like, that's what made one day turn into the rest of my career. And so I would say that's the most pivotal moment in my career is that I didn't back down and I didn't care that he was the first NBA player. I didn't care if I lost him as a client. I was like, I am going to do what's best for the client. And if they don't like it, they're going to find a new trainer that will, kiss their ass and tell them all the good things about them. But I was like, that's not who I'm going to be. I'm going to build my career on developing players by telling them the truth, by holding them accountable, and by getting them better at whatever they need to get better at. And so that right there, because people are always like now, they're like, well, obviously you have all these NBA All-Stars. You can say whatever you want to them, and they're not going to leave you because of your reputation. And I'm like, ask David. Before I ever had a reputation, I made sure that my principles and my standard was not going to drop just to try to save one client or one new relationship. I was like, I was going to be who I was, which I knew was going to help players out. And if they didn't like it, they could find a new trainer. But those were the guys I wanted to, build client relationships with and ultimately, be with them along their side, along their journey for their entire careers.
Man, I think this is a beautiful place. First, I'll say that, man, again, it's funny how all this is correlating with every concept you said in the beginning, with who you are as a person, what you wrote in the book, with your hard work and the fact that you're able to, again, you stay true to your identity. You're able to hold people accountable, but then at the same time, you worked hard. You worked 7 hours beforehand with meeting David, and you were able to give him all the analytics on why he's lacking in certain areas. And again, not backing down. Very gutsy as a college kid as well. So respect to that. But again, I think this is the best place to pivot. You're talking about David Lee's kind of his reputation at the time, feeling like he's preceding you. And I look at the AAU landscape right now, and I think it's drastically changed since even when Tatum was in high school, and kind of sticking with the team. And this goes into college now as well. But what do you think of AAU right now for being the best place for players to develop?
I don't think it matters. I think AAU is great in the aspect of it gives you exposure if you're ready to be seen. I think it's great because a lot of times it pairs you against, the best competition from all around the country. I think it's great because I think you do learn to struggle sometimes. Like a lot of players on AAU teams are the man on their high school team, and then they come together with all these other good individuals and have to figure out how to sacrifice in order to win. I think it teaches you good lessons. Like You only get seen really by college coaches a lot of times if you're winning. They're not in the losers gym and stuff. So I think AAU gets a bad rap for a lot of things that it does well. I think what it doesn't do well a lot of times is develop. And I think it's the same reason why I just said for David Lee. I think too many AAU coaches, too many high school coaches, too many college coaches, there's too many trainers. They're all afraid to lose the client. They're all afraid to lose the player. So they're not willing to tell them the hard truth that's going to actually improve their game. I think there's some AAU coaches and some trainers and some college coaches that are awesome. Awesome. I just think there's also a lot of them that just aren't awesome. They don't study the game. They don't, they're just doing the same thing over and over again. They're recruiting players and spending time acquiring talent instead of developing talent. So I wouldn't say that I think the loyalty thing is a bad thing. Like I love NIL for the fact that players get paid and they get to change their livelihood and they've worked so hard their entire life. I love that. What I hate about it is like, I have a lot of pride for Belmont University because I had a great experience there. I was with my teammates 4 years. We got to build, friendships and memories that are lifetime bonds. We got to grow as a unit. We end up making NCAA tournaments, winning some big games and championships. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. Kids go to an AAU team and then another shoe, company pays them more money and they leave. And then, another team gives them a better opportunity. They leave and then they go to their college and then they leave. It's like, I love, my mom told me this a long time. There's a story in the book about this. My freshman year in high school, I was a bucket getter, but I didn't play defense. And my high school coach was like, if you want to play college, you got to play, defense. And he didn't let me play offense in practice. I was all-time defense. Like I hated practice. I hated my coach at the time too. And I was like, I'm transferring. Every other coach in the area was like, come play for us. We'll let you get 30. You don't have to play defense. Like we'll make all the other guys play defense. Like just get buckets. Like, you know what I mean? And I remember my mom being like, you realize that great coaches force you to do what you need to do and not allow you what you want to do. You want to get buckets, but you need to play defense. And my junior going into senior year, we're down at Peach Jam, and I get matched up with Kendall Marshall. Kendall Marshall played at North Carolina, played in the NBA. And I went back and watched the game again because I remember I locked him up. And I was like, I can't just say I locked him up publicly unless I have proof. So I still have the DVD. And he went 1 for 11 from the field. 1 for 11. And after that game, I got 12 new Division I scholarships, including Belmont, where I ended up playing at. And I remember being like, man, if I would have transferred and my coach didn't teach me how to play defense and force me to play defense and have a different mentality on defense, I would have probably never got those scholarships. I would have had other scholarships because I was super talented offensively, but I wouldn't have got those scholarships specifically from that day and that game. And so that's what I would say the AAU landscape, the high school landscape, the trainer landscape needs more of is the truth and allowing players to understand that sometimes the best way to grow is by going through pain instead of running from pain. And so that's what I would say is I think there are some good AAU coaches. I think there are some good trainers. I think there's good high school coaches. I think there's a lot of good at all levels. I think there's also just a lot of bad. And unfortunately, the bad gives the whole industry a bad look because you do look at players and you go, how do these guys come in the NBA and not know how to shoot after they've been the highest ranked prospects for the last decade? And how do these guys not know how to do this? And how do these guys not do that? But I think it's collectively as a unit, everybody's so afraid to tell them the truth because they're afraid to lose them. And so I hope that one day we can get back to telling the truth and actually developing and putting the player first. So what I'll say is there's some times where maybe a trainer that is just qualified to do a really good job at making them a really good 6th grade basketball player, but they don't know how to get them from 6th to 8th grade. Or there's somebody that's really good for high school players, but they don't know all the nuances that'll make them good college and pro. And there might be a guy that's really good for college players, but they don't know how to get them to an NBA All-Star. And that's okay. But the problem is everybody has an ego involved and doesn't prioritize the players' needs. And there's no difference. Like, kindergarten teachers are great for kindergartners. They're not teaching college courses. And college courses, teachers and professors, they probably would struggle teaching kindergartners sometimes. So I just think that everybody needs to stay in their place and do the best that they can in the role that they're best at. But egos and money and all those other things just sometimes make that hard to do.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What an incredible anecdote, man. And again, everything keeps going back to just again fighting through the rough times, man. You gotta, it's gonna essentially challenge you to do greater things, but then also it's all essentially a lesson at the end of the day from whomever's challenging you or whatever's challenging you. So, well, we're gonna pivot now to again some of the guys you train And because I'm in Philadelphia, I want to ask about Joel Embiid too. And it's been so frustrating here. I mean, again, I'm a Sixers fan. I'm from Pittsburgh, but I'm a Sixers fan because it's the other side of the state, and it's all we have besides the Lakers, right? And I miss Embiid out there, man. I really miss him out there, and it's been so hard to not see him at that MVP caliber because he can't stay in games. I mean, it's just last year that he had 70. Like that's not long ago. But now it's to where we're like praying he can play 50 games in a season. And I know you're watching this as one of his trainers, and I'm what are your thoughts on what the organization could do or what Joel can do to just make sure that he's keeping himself at the healthiest at all times throughout this offseason and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, Joel does everything that he possibly can. I think there's I hate when trolls online or even media people online question his work ethic. And I'm like, guys, he started playing basketball at 16 years old. And now he developed into one of, if not the greatest scorer of all time. He scores more points per minute than anybody in NBA history. He's top five in, points per game, even though he has a limited, minutes. He's a guy that has led the NBA in scoring, 2 championships, and one other year he led the league in scoring, but didn't qualify because he didn't play enough games. He's a guy that would have probably 3 MVPs if he was healthy. He cost himself 2 MVPs by being hurt. You don't get that good without working hard.
Yeah.
So problem is sometimes he has to put so much load to get good that his body was breaking down. And the way he plays on both ends of the floor. You look at a lot of his injuries, it's him blocking shots and getting his feet twisted. It's him driving and getting elbowed. It's him all these different things. So I think that there's some things he can do. Obviously, you can change your style of play a little bit where you don't have to, drive as much of the basket during the regular season. You don't try to draw as many fouls during the regular season. You don't, you can manipulate the game a little bit. But the one thing I love about Joel is he's like, Drew, the only thing I know how to do is go out there and try to play my hardest and win every game. He's like, I don't have it in me, which he's just such a competitor. He's like, he's like, maybe I have to learn how to do it, but I don't have it in me to go out there and coast or take off defensive possessions or just settle for jump shots instead of like going out and trying to bully my way. He's like, when I'm out there, I'm trying to kill offensively and defensively. And so, obviously there's things we'd love for him to be a little bit lighter. He did it this year and he still got hurt. You know what I mean? So, everybody saw he lost 20 pounds and then he gets hurt and everyone's like, well, wait a second. Like we thought it was just losing weight. It's like, no, there's a lot of things that go into it. But Joel, man, he has battled through so much. He's such a competitor. And I really do think that hopefully one day people can actually pay him his respect and appreciate how good of a basketball player he is. Because I really think that even though he's won an MVP and done some amazing things, I still think people, because of his injuries, have kind of downplayed how special he is. And he truly is an all-time great.
Yeah, man, I hope again, it's enlightening to hear the fact that there's a lot of trolls on the internet who know absolute dog shit about basketball. And then there's also some people who just look at the weight aspect, but he's too overweight. But again, I look at guys like Shaq, man, like that dude was a fucking unit. And they're, around the same size, they're around the same level of dominance too. Like you said, he has the most points, points per minute of all time, which is fucking absurd. So yeah, man, like I hope people understand the process it takes for a big just to ensure that he can stay healthy. I don't know how many times Shaq played 70 plus games or certain guys. There's a lot of load there. So, well, again, another big thing that happened this season was the Luka trade, obviously, and the implications that are going to go to the Mavericks franchise and to the Lakers franchise. With being set up for the next 10 years. But again, Dallas lost the other night. They're now out of the playoffs, and there's a lot of ESPN analytics saying, they had a 75% chance to make it with Luka. Now they're tumbling down. They're never going to be able to get back up. And I wanted to know what your thoughts on the trade were in general and what the implications are going to be for the Mavericks long term.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was like everybody else. I thought it was crazy. All my clients were FaceTiming me and like, is this real? Like, we were all trying to check in with each other to get a reliable source. But I think it's so different because it's the first time in NBA history that first team All NBA players were swapped, that means it's like one of the biggest trades ever. Also, I mean, Luka was the cornerstone of their franchise that just led them to the finals. Regardless of what you want to say about his weight, what he produced, you know what I mean? The only thing he did was carry. So I think it was shocking. I understand that, if I was a Mavs fan, I'd be pissed because I was like, Luka was our guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If I was Lakers fans, I'd be thrilled. I was like, now we get a decade of this superstar. Um, but I also do see like I think it hit even harder because Kyrie went down and so many other players went down for the Mavs. AD got hurt in that first game. And the comments that were just unnecessary about Luka being out of shape or defense wins, like all that stuff. So again, from a basketball standpoint, I understand like when Kyrie got traded there, people were saying that was not a great fit. Kyrie and Luka were not a great fit. Now they went to the finals, so it became a better fit. Maybe naturally you have, a better fit with AD and Kyrie, but again, I would never trade a cornerstone player. There's a handful of guys that you would just say that guy's off limits. And I would have put Luka in that conversation, but I guess things went a different way.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, like I am a Lakers fan, so I was thrilled. And I feel like the Lakers are now set up for the next 10, 15
They are,
years,
for
down the
sure.
line. So that's something that's great. I got your email with the NBA award. So you changed some of the answers from the first time we talked. So I want to go over those. But let's go award to award. So we had Shea over Jokic. Like, let me get your explanations for each of them.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, you can't go wrong with either one of those guys. Jokic having his first triple double, almost a 30-point triple double. As good of an offensive season as we've seen in almost NBA history. Obviously, some of the old school numbers were like Wilt was averaging 50. Those numbers just are video game numbers. But in modern day history, one of the better seasons we've ever seen offensively. Shea gets it for me because they won 18 more games. Winning is the ultimate thing that a player can do. And, the other thing about Shea is I think he's more of a two-way guy. And so, I think that the number one seed, being so dominant, it didn't matter. Chet was out for a while. Hardenstein was out for a while. J-Dub was out for a while. It did not matter. Shea was the one that kept making them win and also led the league in scoring while playing, great defense. So Shea edges Jokic. I know it's hard not to give somebody the average of
Yeah, it's
almost a
hard.
3-point triple double, but I value winning the most. I've always said that. Like fans got mad at me a couple years ago when Jokic got it over Joel when he was like a 6 seed, and I was like, I just don't believe that if you're really that valuable, you should be a top seed. Like that's always been my opinion. So Shea narrowly edges Jokic. That's my reasoning.
Yeah, I think the Jokic debate now is similar to what we saw with LeBron again through the entire decade of the 2010s and people being like, oh my God, LeBron's better. Well, certain years Harden had 65 wins when he won MVP, still led the league in scoring. So again, yeah, I think there's the politics of the, year-to-year basis. But I think Shea, like you said, sixth best record of all time with 68 wins. That's edges over every 67 win team. And again, leading the league in scoring 20 plus in 72 straight games. It's just
ridiculous
yeah,
consistency.
ridiculous. Yeah. So, hey, well, you have Dyson Daniels over Denny from the Wizards, right?
No, he got
Or
traded from the Wizards to Portland.
oh,
The
right,
reason,
right, right. Yeah, yeah. And he
so,
had a
so,
crazy, yeah, he had a crazy year this year. He had a breakout year for
he was
sure.
up there, and I told you this off camera, but like I love the jumps from guys like Cade Cunningham. I love the jumps there,
Yeah,
like the guys that go from stars to like superstars. But like Dyson Daniels is a guy that most people when he got traded were just like, he got traded. Like who cares? You know what I mean? They were waiting for like the stars to get traded, and then you see like, wow, he has a huge impact on the game. Denny also like unbelievable. The reason that I think Dyson did it more this year, where Denny took a big jump last year too. So
yeah.
I think it's like Denny was just rolling from last year, but I think that Dyson he had such a different kind of image and impact on the game than he did last year, and so that's why I think that he's up there in that most improved category.
Yeah, that guy, I mean, it seemed like he had a highlight steal at the end of every game, like maybe 5 to 10 times. It was pretty
His steal
absurd,
numbers
like you
were
said.
ridiculous,
Yeah, he
like
averaged over 3, I think, to end the year.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, we talked about Pritchard over Malik Beasley. I think that's such an easy one. He's just been the best bench player on the
Peyton
on the
Pritchard, that
best
should be
team,
a
arguably.
unanimous. I mean,
Yeah.
he should get every first place vote. One of the best teams in basketball. He was a big reason for it. He played like almost like a starter, some games,
Yeah.
and then whenever guys were out, he came in and was cooking. So I think Peyton Pritchard, that's almost the most easy, award that there is going to be this year because everyone else has tough calls.
Yeah, I think that's the criteria of the award is if you play like a starter off the bench. And, to give credit to Beasley, though, he was, second in threes this year behind Anthony Edwards.
Awesome.
And
Awesome
yeah,
season.
yeah. And he thought he was going to be the first player to lead the league in threes off the bench. And then Anthony Edwards had a few threes, I think, in the last game of the season. He clapped back on Instagram. He was like, yeah, you thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, we have Mobley over Dort, too. I think that's a really good defense. Or not. Is that defensive player of the year, right?
Yeah,
Over most
defensive
improved.
player of the year. So here's
Yeah.
my thing. Defensive player of the year to me is very hard because I always look at it as, it's not like a byproduct of just how your team is, but I think that is part of it. You know what I mean? If your team is good, you've seen Rudy Gobert win a lot of defensive player of the years because he anchors one of the better defenses. You've seen Draymond Green when they're really good defensively, and I think guys do it in different ways. Like Draymond is in my opinion, a guy that he's not like a guy that's going to pick you up at the volleyball line, and on a normal high school court and guard you and lock you up. But he's a guy that he knows what plays you're running. He knows how to disrupt the offense. He knows how to get under your skin. He's, can switch 1 through 5. He can front you in the post. He can play behind you. He can just do so many things. You got guys like Lou Dort, who I think Lou Dort's a better lockdown defender than Evan Mobley is. But I think Evan Mobley, big guys a lot of times have a little bit more impact because when the guards, if they do get broken down or run guys off the three-point line, then they can deter people. Like this would be an easy Wemby would have won this like hands down if he was playing because you see guys, not only does he block shots, not only does he alter shots, but also he scares guys from even shooting the ball. So I think that's why I give the edge. If you said who is a better defender, I would say Lou Dort, I think. If you said who should win defensive player of the year, who had a bigger impact defensively, they're very, very close. But I would say Evan Mobley would get my vote just because bigs, I think, sometimes impact the game a little bit more because not only do they play the 1 through 5 stuff, but also they clean up other people's mistakes on the backside if they get, run off the 3-point line.
Well, for someone as a trainer, we had this conversation last time, and I'd like for my viewers to hear it again for the first time with the isolation, that island talk, how we were saying, essentially it's impossible. And as a trainer, you understand this because you go over every single scenario almost with with a player offensively and defensively. You're putting that philosophy in their head when it comes to defensive communication, help side, or if it is on ball, if they're going to go under, over, whatever situation is, you have it covered offensively. So I wanted to hear that anecdote again about.
Yeah, I was just saying I was saying there's no defender that is a lockdown defender on an island. And what that means is like Rudy Gobert won 4 player of the year, defense player of the year.
Yeah.
Last year, Joel scored 50 on him. Jokic has dropped like 50 on him before. Wemby was going to he finished second last year, and Joel scored 70 on him. So last year, the 2 top guys that won defensive player of the year and runner-up, Joel averaged 60 points against them. You know what I mean? Like, think about how ridiculous that is. And then even the perimeter players, you might say like, oh, Lou Dort is a lockdown defender. You might say Drew Holiday's a lockdown defender. And I'm like, listen, they are great defenders and they are really good defenders. But if there was no help, they would get fried by the top players in the league. Like, you know what I mean? It's just not, it's a team defense and it's how do you fit in that team concept and point of attack defenders, which is what we're talking about, on ball defenders that can get up in guys grills and pressure them and turn them and disrupt them. Those guys are very, very valuable. But there's no such thing as a lockdown defender that can just completely shut out a good offensive player on their own. There's guys that can make it harder. But they need a team behind them. Otherwise, offense is just too talented, too good. So that's what I was saying. When it comes to defense, you have to take those things in consideration because it does matter what system they run, what kind of coverages they run. You look at some teams run drop coverages. Well, obviously those bigs are going to get more blocks and more rebounds because they're at the basket, but they're also going to give up more threes and, whatever. Other teams switch 1 through 5. Well, they might get fried a little bit more in one-on-one scenarios, but, that's their team system and strategy. So I don't think many fans look at the system, the coaching, the strategy, the opportunity, their teammates, all of that kind of stuff, which I think does play into it.
Well, we talked about trolls earlier, and I think another aspect of trolling, I think everyone trolls Rudy Gobert on Twitter and on every social media site whenever they're like, oh my God, he's playing terrible defense. But again, like you said, it's like these guys are so advanced now. It's like a completely different game with knowing every single, and anytime a big drops on a guard, like of course they're going to know whether to either hezzy or if they're going to float game, if it's going to be a Tony Parker too. Like, again, it's just the bags are so deep. So, again,
I love what Rudy Gobert said the other day. Rudy Gobert came out and had a comment that said, I challenge so many shots at the rim, I am going to get dunked on sometimes. I
yeah,
guard so many guys that I am going to get crossed over sometimes. I contest so many shots, I am going to get scored on sometimes. But look at my numbers throughout, 100 possessions, throughout games, throughout weeks, throughout months, throughout seasons.
yeah, right.
I think that's important. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of players that don't get the credit for how good of a defender they are. But I do think that defensive player here, that's what makes it tricky, is just there's no such thing as a lockdown defender. It's more of who makes the most impact for their team. They have to have a good team around them so that they're a good defender, and goes from there.
Yeah. Well, you have Stephon Castle for your Rookie of the Year, and I think Rookie of the Year is most of the time exempt from team success. And it's kind of funny.
Agreed.
I think Jared McCain would have probably got that award had he not gotten
He was
injured.
cooking.
He was on certainly on a trajectory to do so. But I think Stephon Castle was a pretty easy choice. I loved him out of UConn. I think that guy was such a dog. I remember the national
He's
championship
developed
game.
a lot
Yeah.
too. Like at the beginning of the season to now, I think he's grown a lot. I think it also helped him a little bit having Wemby out, just so that he could kind of go through growing pains and mistakes and learn from them and get better. But I think he'll win Rookie of the Year. There wasn't like a dominant rookie. It wasn't like one of those years we had LeBron and Carmelo and we were like,
Right.
who should get it? Like it was more so like a lot of guys that were middle ground, no superstar numbers, but I think that some of these guys will really develop into quality starters, and maybe we don't have the superstar, but we have a lot
Yeah.
of guys that are going to hopefully keep growing and eventually become impact players.
Well, speaking of that development, I think we talked about Cade Cunningham earlier. He's obviously coming into his own as an All-NBA caliber player from year in and year out, and for the future. And I'm looking at, like you said, other rookies. Stephon Castle, you said he made a big leap. What is the biggest aspect of one's game that goes from being a college player, whether it's one and done, or somebody like Cooper Flagg, who has, obviously an absurd amount of potential in the league. Like, again, that rookie year, you're obviously going to see pretty deflated numbers. He could be averaging 15 to 20, maybe. That's somewhere reasonable for the time being. I could be proven completely wrong, but again, then you see by year 2, year 3. I think Trae Young's a good example. Trae Young, his first year, averaged like in the ballpark of like 20 to 22 points, right? Like maybe 6, 7 assists, and then the next year or the third year, he averaged like 29 points, 12 assists. It's like a crazy jump into these absurd numbers. And I'm curious, what do you think is the big leap that players take from, being a star in college to then eventually having that rookie year of getting acclimated and then being a star in the NBA?
I think it's a different game. I mean, you got to remember that
Yeah.
the NBA is the best players in the world. You know what I mean? College is made up of the best high school players in the world. You know what I mean? So, and you're also going up a big age gap. In college, even freshmen that impact the game, they're only playing against guys that are 3, 4 years older than them. Whereas in the NBA, you might have somebody like literally like LeBron, for instance. He's got his son in the NBA. Like you're going up against grown men that have done this for for a decade plus. You also have guys that don't understand that like the game is more physical, the game is faster. There's new concepts, there's new systems, new rotations. So there's a lot that they get thrown into. And then the game starts slowing down once you start understanding all those things. And then your body develops, you mature, you start watching more film, you learn how to take care of your body better. You work on the parts of the game that you really need to work on to impact, the NBA game instead of just college. So I think there's so much that goes into it. And I think it's just a learning process. There are some guys that have come in the league and have been unbelievable from the jump, but usually to really impact winning at a high level and become their best player, it takes some time. It takes some development. And I think it's just a process that people have to buy into and understand, that is part of, the superstar journey, the role player journey. It's part of everybody's journey, is kind of finding what can help you impact team success and then, get better and better at that over time.
Right. Well, certainly let's wrap up with, a couple playoff predictions and going into. We'll skip the first 2 rounds. It was a beautiful first day of basketball. I think every game was relatively close except for Bucks Pacers. But I think, without Damian Lillard, it's kind of hard to stay that close. But the Nuggets game was amazing. Knicks game was literally to the wire ridiculous. I don't know how the Lakers game's going right now. I saw the Lakers were up big in the beginning of the first quarter. But let's skip to the conference finals, and if we have picks, I know we talked last time. I know you want to be sensitive to your clientele, but we were able to give conference finals to finals previews.
For sure. Yeah. So, I think the Thunder, even though they're young and people are, saying that kind of stuff, I think the Thunder are one of the deepest teams in basketball. I think they can score. I think they get good quality shots. I think they win the margins. I think they play defense. Probably the best defensive team in the league. So I've got the Thunder. I got them winning. I've got the other one is crazy because I think the Lakers are going to win that series. I think the Warriors are going to win their series.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Warriors advancing to the conference finals. I'm going to have the Thunder beating the Warriors. And then on the other side, I told you this, off camera. Yeah. I've got Celtics. I think the Celtics are going to repeat. So I got the Celtics in the conference finals. I think they're going to beat the Knicks in round 2. And then, I've got the winner of the Pacers-Bucks series advancing to play them. Obviously, I got, some guys I work with on both teams in that series. So I'm just going to leave it as the winner of the Pacers and the Bucks. But I got the Celtics over those guys, and then I got the Celtics over the Thunder in the championship. So that is my prediction. And I obviously I want all my guys to do well and stuff like that. That would put Ed and Jason in the finals, and would put some other guys in the conference finals. But I think this is going to be a great. Like I said, I told you this. I really do think that when you look at the regular season, there were so many teams that were, in the hunt for Cooper Flag, and there are other teams that were already positioned, where they had their slots or whatever. So the regular season, we had a lot of games that didn't matter as much, or you knew who was going to win. And so people thought like the game of basketball was down, or, the ratings were down or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, man, when you look at this playoff bracket, these are great series. And they could go any way. You got teams like the Warriors who are they're in a play-in game, and I'm picking them to go to the conference finals. You got Anthony Edwards versus LeBron and Luka in round 1. You've got the Clippers, who are as hot as anybody, playing against Jokic and the Nuggets, which is going to be unbelievable. You got a tough team like the Pistons that is playing against the Knicks. And it's funny because the Knicks really made their stamp last year being the toughest team, getting rebounds and balls. And now they're playing against a team that's, just as tough. And, then Magic, they've actually had a better record than the Celtics in the regular season, 2-1. I know Jason only played in one of those games, but still, it's like there's going to be a lot of good. And the Cavs Cavs have an unbelievable year, and they get rewarded with the Heat. Now I know that the Heat lost Jimmy in that trade, but man, they're still the Miami Heat.
Spoelstra's that guy as a coach, though, so you never know what could happen.
Yeah, Tyler's been balling. They've been doing really well since they made some lineup changes. So I'm excited as a fan. Obviously, as a trainer, it's stressful when you're trying to do all the film breakdown and navigate and provide solutions for problems and make adjustments. But as a fan, it's nice watching good high level basketball that results in close and competitive games, which is what we all look for.
Well, you implied a couple upsets there. So, all right, I want to know how many games the Warriors beat the Lakers in, and I want to know how many games the winner of the Bucks Pacers beats.
I'm terrible at all that. I'm terrible at the game stuff. I just know they're going to win. Okay, that's why I just tell you what I think is going to win. So, people are, do you think it's in 6 or 7? I don't know. I just think they're going to end up finding a way to win. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I feel you.
I was telling some people that today, as we're recording this, it's right after the Clippers, just blew a lead to Denver.
Big ass lead, yeah.
And when the Clippers were winning, I told some people, I was doing an event for Jordan Brand, and I said, the Nuggets are going to win this game. I was like, they're just better at closing. They've been together longer. They understand how to close games. And sure enough, they did. So I think those things go into play. It'll be interesting. But like I said, I think a lot of these series can go any way, and which makes it really fun. Like you just said, you just were talking about, the Lakers had a big lead. Right now, they're down almost 20 points, even though they had that big lead.
Are you fucking kidding me, bro?
Almost down 20 points in the third quarter. So again, I think that's the crazy thing, is anything can happen. Detroit was dominating the Knicks, and Knicks went on a 21-23-0 run. So
Man, this
Yeah,
stupid, the
I didn't mean
stupid.
to ruin your mood right before
Yeah,
we
man, damn. The
but
NBA app is a lying ass son of a bitch because it's telling me, oh, we got a good game in LA. Clearly, we don't have a good game in LA. Well, nonetheless, I think, again, I want to, wrap up with, this. I think, again, there's a lot of teams that are like extremely close, and it may not be a star. It may just be certain adjustments they have to make as a team. I feel like the Knicks, the Pacers, the Timberwolves, and the Bucks, I feel like are always like, really close. And the Bucks have been there before and they've won, right, with Giannis. But, I don't know. What do you think it takes for some of these teams to get that deep run? Again, the Bucks have struggled for a minute. The Pacers are a young team. They got Nembhard, who's like really came into a solid basketball player, and Siakam, who's a champion. He's a vet. And then you got the Knicks, who they have loads of experience. The Timberwolves were in the conference finals. They got loads of experience. They're whooping the Lakers' ass. What do you think it's going to take for them to make a leap and to compete with teams like the Thunder and like the Celtics and potentially the Cavs too? We don't know how they're going to look tomorrow, but you never know.
playoffs is all about one, staying healthy,
Yeah.
two, playing your best basketball at the right time, and then three, matchups. You know what I mean? So it's a game of chess. It's a game of countering guys. That's the thing. A lot of times, game one is it's important. Obviously, you want to win every game that you can, but it's like, okay, that's based on the scouting report that we've put together throughout a week of preparation. Now, here's the adjustments start. And so game two is really where you kind of start to see which way the series is going to go, but based on the adjustments teams are making. And both teams are making adjustments to try to counter each other. So that's what I love about the NBA playoffs is it's 7 games. NCAA tournament is so fun for upsets. It's fun it was fun for the mid-majors before the NIL started. All our good players get stolen. But the NBA Finals, is made up of the two teams that have been able to endure through so much, during their playoff run. So staying healthy, getting hot at the right time, making, good adjustments, the matchups, and then ultimately making shots. So it's going to be a fun playoffs for sure.
All right. Well, the last fun question I have for you, I know Dash personally. I've worked out with him before. He's a great guy. I've never met C. Brickley, but if there was a one-on-one comp between all of you guys, like what's happening? What's happening? Who's winning that game?
I'm winning.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what I
over.
mean? I'm a first team. I played Division I basketball and I was first team. The one
Yeah.
thing I can't stand is when players that like never played D1, they're like, "Well, I would beat you now." I'm like, I don't care about playing now. Like back when it mattered, I was in the NCAA tournament hooping. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so I love that all these trainers now all of a sudden want to play one-on-one. I'm like, yo, we're 35, we're all washed. Like when it mattered, I was cooking. Y'all weren't. So that's all I'm gonna say is when
Yeah.
we were all in our playing careers, go look at the stats, go look at where people are playing, how much they're playing. There's some other good trainers like Tyler Ralph played high level basketball, played
Yeah.
that and like Phil Handy played high level basketball. Like there's some other guys that hooped, but I'm a big trash talker anyway. But like when people tell me like, oh, I'd beat you in one-on-one, I'm like, that's great that you think that, but it doesn't matter now. Like you know what I mean? I'm a trainer now, but when I played, when we actually were hooping, you weren't getting scholarships. I was like, you were watching me in the NCAA tournament. Like, and I like that's what it is. So I'm not saying I was good enough to play in the NBA, but when you compare my resume to some of the other top trainers, like as a basketball player, like it holds its
Yeah,
own.
it's there. Yeah. Well, I felt the fire just from that conversation. So, hey, man, thank you so much for joining the show. I can't appreciate you enough. This has been a pleasure to pick your brain about your core concepts, who you are as a person, and some present and future insights about basketball. So I'm sure my viewers appreciate it just as much or more. So, hey, man, all the best to you, man. I mean, we're gonna link up for sure and continue to collaborate. I'm not worried about that, but kudos, man. I appreciate you so much. It's been a pleasure to learn about you.
No doubt, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, for sure, bro. All right, you guys, tune in for more coverage. Peace.